Yo, what is going on? PartTimerZack here. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Punishing Gray Raven. I wanted to go over one of the reasons I feel like it's one of the best gachas that we've had in the current year, and why I feel like it's going to be one of the best gachas we have for a very, very long time. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So I wanted to break this video down into a couple different points, mainly going to be gameplay slash loop, the gacha slash rates, lore slash characters, and then the future window. So what is CN doing correctly that is setting up the overall global experience, and what can we expect to jump into a couple of years from now, why I think that this game is going to have a huge longevity. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into it. So firstly, I wanted to talk about gameplay slash loop. I really do, and I have always preached this, that I feel like this game really respects the player's overall time and commitment to the game. If you want to jump in there 10-15 minutes, you are able to do so. If you want to play a little bit longer, there's stuff like Warzone, a little bit of that boost on the Phantom Pain Cage, giving us 4 times instead of 3. So you're able to jump in there, play a little bit. Maybe you want to practice on Warzone, get a little bit better at the overall fundamentals of the game. It's just nice to be able to see the fact that, hey, if you want to play a little bit longer, you can. If you only got 10-15 minutes a day, you can do that as well. It just feels like an overall respect of your time and commitment towards the game. So Phil, even though that the loop is somewhat repetitive, it does give you a little bit of a sense of accomplishment every single time that you're grinding stuff, because you are going for stuff in the shop, which in turn helps boost your characters, which in turn gets you a little bit better at the game as you're kind of playing, if you are working on getting a little bit better, obviously. But as you kind of go through, I really feel like this game does a really good job of engaging you at all times. A lot of these different games, whenever you start going through the loop, it just feels a little bit like a chore. And obviously with Punishing Gray Raven, that can happen to a lot of different players. But I know a lot of people, myself included, love being able to jump in there, and it just always feels good, right? It always feels good making that perfect dodge, going into the matrix, using some of your different moves. Even if you're doing the same repetitive kind of mission, it just always feels nice. It feels engaging. It feels like you're kind of having fun playing it. And it doesn't matter too much that it's kind of a core loop. Obviously, a lot of people have brought up a point where it's a lot like Monster Hunter when it comes to the fact that you go in there, obviously you're going towards a certain beast that you're kind of grinding out, but it's always nice because Monster Hunter has a really fun kind of loop, because it has a lot of different aspects, a lot of different mechanics that you have to think about, and the gameplay is just overall fun. So even though you're fighting the same monster, sometimes in cases of days and weeks and stuff like that, to get the different armors and pieces and sets that you want, it does feel really cool because of the mechanics, the gameplay. And I really feel like Punishing Gray Raven has found a good balance of having a good core loop while also giving you a little bit more of an engaging experience while building your teams, your units, your overall account. It just gives you a sense of progress as you're kind of going through the overall loop. I also feel like the gameplay in general and the way that you play is definitely dependent on the way that you have a commitment towards the overall game. If you want to get better, you want to start doing dodge canceling, or maybe even using your abilities for different reasons. I like to use the example of S. Bianca's yellow, because you are able to do it obviously for damage, but a lot of times you can use it as a dodge. You can use it as kind of a way to maneuver yourself in different positions, to be able to use her sniper ability. And it just feels like there's levels of the game that allow you to get a little bit better if you want to. I also like the fact that Warzone is a more competitive side to Punishing Gray Raven. I really think that it gives you a sense of accomplishment and empowerment as you kind of progress through the different ranks, and you're able to get a higher score than you got last time. It does give you a little bit more of a personal goal setting. And even though you're on a team, it really does feel like, hey, you know, I'm contributing in my own way. I'm able to kind of take my own accountability and just kind of grind the way that I see fit, whether I want to do my units, whether I want to do my teams, whether I want to kind of grind as a person or a player to get a little bit better at dodging things or using mechanics in a different way. I really feel like Warzone is just one of those things that give you a little bit of a competitive edge without having to be a direct PvP, playing into the meta and having to do some kind of like, you know, tactics that maybe you wouldn't want to do, or maybe you don't really like to do to get ahead in PvP. It's just a kind of a cool experience to jump into Warzone and kind of grind it the way that you want to and get a higher score based on the way that you want to play. Next, I wanted to talk about gacha and rates. I honestly feel like this is one of the most free-to-play games when it comes to the fact that you're able to get S characters, you're able to get free A rank characters, you can grind those characters, you can get the different shards, and free-to-play way. Now, obviously, it's a little bit better if you just jump out, pull out your wallet and be like, okay, I'm just going to pay for the SS character, the SSS character, and then just go on about your day. But there are ways to grind out if you're free to play. You want to get your A rank character to S rank, you could do the interlude, you can do some different things with Pain Cage. You can also do Pain Cage for your S rank characters. You are able to pull those, and essentially if you just work on your account every single day in between the S ranks, you are able to get any S rank that you want through the pity, which is 60, which I honestly think is low enough, but it's not as bad as some of the other ones that are like 100, 150 to 200. It's just kind of a nice thing that if you have to go to 60 pity, you can definitely do it as a free-to-play player, as long as you're willing to spend the time and commitment it takes to build up the BC and you manage your BC accordingly. You're able to get every S rank character that you want, and then obviously you can get the A rank characters because they're free most of the time that you're in the event shop that you're able to just grind for and go from there. And if you want to get them from A to S, you can do that as well, just going through their interlude twice a day to build them up. So it's more of this thing where you can do a little bit more time versus money, which is nice. It's kind of a nice route to be able to see as a free to play. Hey, if I put a little bit more time and effort into the game, I am rewarded by building out my characters. And honestly, it feels like a little bit more of an accomplishment if you have a particular character that you really like and you get them all the way from A to SS or to SSS, it just feels like a little bit more of an accomplishment, because it's like, hey, I worked for this character and I did a lot of stuff to get this character to the point that they're at. So besides character gacha, there is weapon gacha in the game, and the first thing that I love about this game is that the 5 stars don't feel like useless. There are a lot of times where getting a 6-star weapon is just going to be the top priority, especially if you're going for like your main DPS. You probably want Esbianca, you know, Alpha's 6-star weapon. There's a lot of cases where 6-star weapons make a little bit more sense. But the fact is, if you get a 5-star weapon and you have a more reliable way of getting that 5-star weapon, you know, gacha, and you got your co-op, just a couple different ways that you're able to jump in there and grind those 5-star. If you are able to get that 5-star resoed, you are able to at least do a matching damage when it comes to the 6-star base. Now, obviously, if that 6-star is fully resoed, and you know it's going to blow the 5-star out of the water, but the fact is you can catch up in some way to make it at least a little bit more reliable and a little bit more usable, versus just saying, okay, the 5-star is completely useless, you have to get a 6-star if you want to be able to do any damage. It's just nice to be able to see the fact there's a little bit of give and take, obviously, between the two rarities. It's not so much so that you have to pull out your wallet just to get a 6-star weapon in order to feel like you're playing the game and kind of progressing through it. Next thing I want to talk about is characters and lore, and honestly, I feel like this game does an amazing job at telling the stories of the characters, and the fact that it's a little bit smaller of a cast of characters is honestly something that I really enjoy. If it's done correctly, I really feel like you're able to kind of grow with these characters and feel a little bit more of a bond than you normally would with a big cast of characters. Now, it does have to do it correctly, and I feel like Punishing Gray Raven does a really good job at giving you some different layers of the overall characters, the different types of constructs, and even the different variations of those constructs feel like they have a personal growth and why they're kind of proceeding that way. It's not just like, hey, here's another character that looks the same but has, you know, whatever, a little bit different of a look. They actually have a different feel, and if you watch the story and go through the interlude with them, you can start to understand from the story and the lore of why they kind of progress that way. And honestly, I feel a little bit more of an attachment on that side of things versus a whole cast of characters that are just like a huge long thing and you just kind of don't know where the story begins, where they fall in. Now, they can have a time and a place. I know a lot of different characters and a lot of different games work that way, like Arc Knights and Genshin and all that kind of stuff, but it's kind of nice that you have a little cast of character and you feel like you're part of this team, and you feel like the overall world is just something that you're more in tune with and a little bit more personal. At least that's how I feel whenever I'm jumping onto it. I'm reading the different stories, why the constructs are proceeding the way that they are, why they're going into some different bodies, why that kind of works, and where that kind of plays into the story. I just feel like overall it just makes me a little bit more engaged and a little bit more attached to the characters. So I will admit, at the very beginning, when you jump into the overall story, it does seem a little slow. It does seem a little bit boring, when the fact is you don't see the big picture. You're just kind of like, what's going on with these characters? Why are we building this team? Why is it building so slowly? But then if you kind of get an idea, especially where we're starting to go into the chapters that we're on with this current event, you start to see like, okay, this is actually starting to get a little bit more prominent. A lot of things are starting to pick up. The story and the characters are starting to get a little bit more fleshed out, and the story is progressing very, very nicely. And if you're paying attention to the CN stuff and you're like, okay, why is this going on? This is crazy. You have to go back and read the entire story to match up to why everything's happening the way it is and what kind of buildup leads to it. So I understand that some of the parts of the story are a little bit boring at the very beginning, but there's a reason that the buildup is so slow, because it just goes into such a great story and such a huge development of some of the different characters that it really does need to be that slow in order to give you a little bit more idea of what's going on with this team and build a little bit more of that connection. I know a lot of you guys want to see story content. I'm definitely working on it. I have not forgotten about it. I'm just trying to make it the best that I can, because I think it's a very good thing to be able to jump on there and do it correctly instead of just throwing stuff out. I don't want to just do a reaction to the story. I want to be able to kind of tell it in a way that people will, you know, kind of get an idea of what's going on, and it'll make a little bit more sense, especially if you're confused in certain parts. I don't want to just be like, I don't know what's going on either. You know, I want to be able to tell that story. So I am working on it. Just bear with me when it comes to the story. But all I got to say is it's so good from what I've been able to read, and especially going back and reading it, it's just gotten better overall because I've been able to see everything that's progressing and see the bigger picture. So lastly, I want to talk about future window. What is going on with the future? Why does that affect global? And what does it matter for global that CN is doing so well? Here's kind of what's going on. Whether you like it or not, love it, hate it, whatever, the future for Punishing Gray Raven is very bright. It is very ongoing, and it is very good. Okay, so the CN is just kind of giving you more of an idea of what is going on, why we should be excited, and how those story elements, like I said a little bit earlier, building up into this grand story that's just going to give you a little bit more excitement, a little bit heartache when it comes to some of the different elements. And the fact is, we just know what's going on, and it gives you a little bit more of an idea whether you should go some certain constructs, maybe you should build some certain teams, what kind of content we're going to have, how this kind of fleshes out. I understand right now, especially with these couple of events that have been kind of copy and paste, it seems a little bit more like, man, I just want to get to a point where CN is. But I really think that if you stick with it, especially if you're a day one vet, you will be rewarded very handsomely whenever it comes to that year one mark or that 2 year mark. You're just going to have such a good account, and you're just going to be ready to tackle on all this content in such a fun way that I honestly feel like a lot of people who quit recently are going to be regretting that. They're going to be coming when all this stuff comes and they're like, wow, this is awesome, but I don't have the units, I don't have the structure, I don't have the account to do this. I really wish I would have stayed. And I think a lot of people are going to be kicking themselves in the butt when it comes to a year from now, whenever we have like a couple of different things that we can see on CN. And I honestly feel like it's just going to be really fun to be able to jump in there and do it. But anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. Overall, I really love Punishing Gray Raven. I just think that it's one of the best gachis that I played in a really long time. It always engages me and keeps me coming back for more, even if sometimes it's a little bit repetitive. Maybe I get a little bit of a burnout. It's just one of those games I can't stop playing for very long. Even if I take a 1 or 2 day break, I'm like, okay, I want to do some Warzone. I got to get back up to leader. I got to see what I'm doing with the overall progress. And it just feels like my account is always going in a way that I'm just happy with. And it just seems like I'm putting a lot of time and effort into it. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Have a good rest of your night, guys. Peace.